we're good.
Good?
We're live.
Yeah, sure. Come on up.
Come on, okay. I didn't know if you had to do anything.
Ready to go?
We're live.
Welcome everybody to the work session, October 13th. I'd like to start this evening with the pledge. Everybody please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everybody. This is now the audit committee meeting or annual external audit.
Great, well, thank you. My name is Dave Tellier. I'm the external audit partner from Meraki Smith. We were contracted by the district to perform the audit of the financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2020. We also performed a single audit of the district's major federal award programs for the same fiscal year end, as well as an audit of the district's extra collection activity funds on the cash basis of accounting. And we issued our management letter presenting any findings or recommendations that we have to go through on the internal controls. I'm just going to flip through the presentation. I'm sorry. I think you all have it. So before I get into going through over the financial statements, I always like to talk about the conduct of the audit. So again, as everybody knows, this was a very unusual year, especially for us in trying to perform an audit engagement with the district. We kind of, at the beginning in our planning stages, we worked with management, kind of come up with a plan of conducting the field work in a remote capacity as well as an on-site. So we kind of did like a hybrid approach where where the management uploaded a lot of documents and records to us. We would kind of go through them, make our selections. We'd ask for other things. They would kind of pack them up in the box. We'd come on site, go through them, pick them up, bring them, go through everything. So we really appreciate, obviously, all the efforts by the business office to help assist us, because although we had a lot of things going against us, we still had the October 15th deadline. So we set it in our plan to make sure that we were going to make that deadline, which we will. But in doing so, obviously, our audit engagement took longer than usual. Because of those procedures going back and forth. But the business office, once again, did a tremendous job, led by Jackie and Deborah, managing all of our requests, getting us all the records, putting us in touch with the necessary people that we needed to speak to and go through things. So again, they have to still manage the district on a day-to-day basis and do their daily duties, but then we come in and really add a lot of burden to their schedule. But again, they did a tremendous job, and we really appreciate all the efforts there. And I think the biggest thing is just because of this, a lot of comments that I got was, well, did your risk change in the audit engagement? How are you comfortable with how everything was presented? Because again, it's in a kind of a hybrid model. And based on our preliminary assessment of risk, everything that we identified as being either a risk or associated to a risk, we were able to review adequately. We were comfortable with the records that we obtained, and we were able to mitigate all of those issues that we saw as possible risk. So it required no other further investigation or anything other than what we initially sought out to. So just want to make sure I made the audit committee aware of that. And then just kind of going through the financial statements. I kind of broke it down in the sections as I've done in previous years. So the first 2 pages is our auditor's opinion, which was a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. The next 10 pages, pages 3 through 13, is the management's discussion and analysis section. This provides a general overview and analysis of the financial statements, as well as compares financial data to last year's numbers and operating results, as well as addresses any key variances from last year to this year. Again, I always believe the management's discussion and analysis is a really helpful tool to anybody who is not familiar with the financial statements of the district, because if you could read those 10 pages, it gives you a really good understanding of the differences of what I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes between the 2 separate sets of financial statements, as well as some of the the key highlights that occurred at the district and things that will affect the district going in the future. So those 10 pages really give you a great understanding of the financial statements. After the management's discussion and analysis section is the first set of financial statements, which is called the district-wide financial statements. These are on the full accrual basis of accounting. So this has all of your capital assets, all of your long-term debt, all of those items are consolidated into these financial statements to give you like a full financial picture similar to a for-profit corporation. So some of the things I want to highlight here is just, you can see that the working capital as well as the current ratio, which are things that we always measure on the accounting side, improved from last year to this year. And that was primarily due to the increase in cash at the end of the year as a result of decreased spending because of the COVID-19 in the last quarter of the fiscal year. So as a result of that, obviously it made the financial picture look a little better on a full accrual basis. You have total capital assets, net of depreciation of $34.9 million, which with a current year net increase of just under $100,000. So your capital outlay or purchases of equipment exceeded your depreciation charges for the year by about $100,000. And the biggest thing that we've added onto the balance sheet over the last few years is called the other post-employment benefit obligation, which for the end of the year, all other post-employment benefit obligations, or what's termed OPEB, related items totaled $41 million, which is a long-term liability, with a current year increase of about $1.1 million. So now this number is really, it's calculated by an actuary that the district hires. However, it's really an accounting adjustment to the full accrual numbers. And I say that because the district cannot reserve any monies towards this long-term obligation. It cannot set aside any monies for this obligation either. The only thing it can do is pay as it comes due. So all your current outlay relating to this obligation is about $855,000. So that's the amount that is an actual cash outflow for the year in terms of this obligation, and that continues to be paid on an ongoing basis and current. For the current year, in relation to this, because it did have that big increase, some of the things changed on the actuarial side. The biggest thing being the discount rate that they utilized. So they went from a 3.5% discount rate to a 2.21 discount rate. And that was really a change that was done industry-wide by the actuaries to conform with the actual accounting pronouncement that oversaw this implementation of OPEB. After the full accrual statements is the governmental fund financial statements. Those are the funds that are managed by the district on a day-to-day basis. The district has, I believe, 4 governmental funds. Each one is utilized for a specific purpose. The general fund is kind of the overall fund that's utilized based on the budget of the year-end by the voters. So that fund had total assets of $18.8 million at the end of the year, with total liabilities of $3 million, which are all comparable with the previous year, which left us with fund balance of about $15.8 million. Of that fund balance, there's different classifications. There is the unassigned, unappropriated, so that's to be utilized by the district go forward at their discretion, total of $2.9 million. You have $830,000 in assigned funds. These are monies that are used to balance next year's budget, as well as encumbrances that carry over from the current year to the next year, which are expenditures that just have not been received by the district by June 30th. And then you have $12 million of restricted funds, with the large portion of that being in your capital reserve fund and in your retirement contribution reserve fund as well. For the year on an operating basis, so the general fund had a positive change in fund balance of about $2.4 million. Comparing the budget, the revenues were over budget by about $349,000, and your expenditures were under budget by about $3.4 million. Again, as I spoke before, obviously there was some savings towards the end of the fiscal year because of the in-school construction shutdown. So many districts obviously saved money on that side, with the understanding that a large portion of that is being spent in the summer to get ready for the new fiscal years and to be able to bring students back into the classrooms. The next fund is the Capital Projects Fund. That's the fund that manages all the capital projects throughout the district. Here, you can see that your assets is about $315,000 with a little bit of about $4,000 in liabilities, leaving you with fund balance of about $310,000 relating to ongoing future projects. For the year, you had about $1.3 million in capital outlay, which represented the amount of money spent on the capital projects on a district-wide basis. The next fund is the Special Aid Fund. This is a fund that's utilized for the federal and state grants that are administered here throughout the district. These are reimbursable grants, so there is no fund balance or there is no net income or loss for the year. So it's a self-balancing fund. So your assets will equal your liabilities, as well as your revenues will equal your expenditures. For the most part, again, these are fully reimbursable grants, except there are some grants like the summer school handicap program where there is a subsidized portion that comes from the general fund to make that whole. So that's the other financing sources of about $62,000 that came from the general fund to balance that fund. The next fund is the School Lunch Fund, which obviously looks after the food nutrition program here at the district. You have total revenues of about $350,000 to about $340,000 in expenses. You had a slight increase for the year of $23,000 within that fund. Again, you can see that there was some decreased variances from last year to this year, again, because of losing those 3 months towards the end of the year, for serving meals and then charging for them. So. The last fund, which isn't a fund anymore, but the district used to have a debt service fund, which was closed at the end of last year. So, so this just shows that the full closing of it at the end of the year. After the governmental funds is the fiduciary fund financial statements. These are the monies that the district holds in a fiduciary or trustee capacity. It's mainly extra classroom activity funds, scholarship funds, things of that nature. The district cannot utilize these funds to pay its bills. So these are in a fiduciary type of a fund and set aside. The presentation here has not changed from the previous year. After the fiduciary funds are the notes to the financial statements, which gives the reader a more detailed understanding of the accounting policies, as well as some detailed information around certain larger balances like your capital assets, long-term obligations, your pension plans, and your other post-employment benefit obligation. The presentation here, again, is consistent with the previous year. And the notes here are, I'd like to mention that they're in accordance with the New York State Education Department guidelines. So every year, the New York State Education Department issues what they call their reference manual, which is pretty much a template of the way in which they would like the financial statements to be formatted and laid out. So we make sure that the notes and the financial statements adhere to that so that we are in conformity with what the Education Department is looking for in the district. After the notes are supplementary schedules. Again, the presentation is consistent here. Some of these schedules are required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and then some are required by the New York State Education Department. So again, these schedules are consistent with the previous year. There have been no changes or added schedules like there have been over the last few years. So we like to see the consistency there from one year to the other. Then it goes into the extra classroom activity funds. I mentioned earlier, we performed the audit on the cash basis of accounting, so it's just cash in and cash out for the clubs. We reviewed the financial transaction within all the clubs here, and we issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the extra classroom activity funds as presented.
Can you just explain that for a minute? Clean opinion?
Mm-hmm. So a clean opinion is, it pretty much is stating that the way in which the financial statements are presented for us is not only in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. Like your main statements are more on the accrual basis of accounting, where these are the cash basis of accounting, and those are all segregated out. And it also means that we conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. So it's pretty much a clean bill of health, so to speak. That's the type of opinion you want. If we had issues, it would be a modified opinion, and we disclosed to you what those issues were that we found that either couldn't lead us to obtain clarity or supporting documentation for certain numbers and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then kind of rounding out the report, is the federal single audit. Again, because the district received more than $750 in federal funds for the year, we had to perform a single audit, which is not only a financial audit, but it's also a compliance-based audit, depending on the program. So we looked at the various federal funds that were received by the district, and going through the criteria, we select what we call as a major program. And for this year, we selected the Section 611 and 619 programs, which relate to special education. So we looked at those programs again, not just on the financial base, but also the compliance that surrounds those specific programs, which is given to us by the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, and it's called the Uniform Guidance, and it's a compliance supplement. So we go through that depending on each specific grant has that they call it a CFDA number that's specific to that grant, and within the compliance supplement, it tells you the types of compliance issues or adherence that the district should have for that type of grant, and we have to make sure that everything's there. In our audit of those programs, everything is found to be in order and in conformity with the compliance requirements. So we had no instances of non-compliance or question costs relating to those. So again, for the federal award programs, we issued a clean or unmodified opinion on those as well. For the year, we just had, now switching gears just to the financial statements overall, we did have compliance findings relating to the late filing the ST3, which I've talked about that the date to file that is very unrealistic because you have to file it within the early part of September, usually September 2nd or 3rd. We're still conducting the audit at that point, so the books and records technically are not closed. So the district usually, and with our agreement, will not file something that would not be a final or a complete vision of what the district should have there. So they held off on that. It has been filed and it is complete. And this year, it was also cited for excess fund balance. So you're only allowed to carry 4% of next year's budget in the unassigned or unappropriated category because of the excess monies that were saved this year, but being earmarked for the upcoming year. That pushed us over the 4% level. So I totally agree with the way in which everything was handled. All of my clients are in the same exact situation as you. It's not like you're unique in any which way. But unfortunately, I have to cite it because it is what it is. But I want to make sure that we at least got my take on it, that I agree with where the district stands on those two issues. Outside of that, the biggest thing I'd like to also talk about is in our reviews of all of the internal controls over the financial reporting and the general ledger and looking at the transactions of the district, we found there to be no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We also did not come up with any current year recommendations or what I like to call suggestions, to improve upon those internal controls, as well as the policies the district has in place relating to its financial transactions and things of that nature. So I always like to end with the clean, unmodified opinions. We have no suggestions or recommendations. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So the last thing to convey to you is that this is a very clean and strong audit report that that we're able to present to you this evening. But I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has on anything relating to the audit or the financial statements.
Very straightforward. It sounds like we're operating at a high level. You're doing a great job along the way.
We're not surprised. We have the best business officials.
We have the best assistants. Not always mentioning.
No, it's a good team. It really is. And, we only get to see it for a short period of time, and we're looking at what happened over the course of the year. So, but again, I think you have a very strong team. You have a lot to be, a lot to be proud of, and especially under the circumstances of how you're having to operate now and what the future looks like. At least you're positioned in a good spot to start, but we don't know where tomorrow is going to bring us. So, unfortunately, but as of June 30, this is where we stand, and it should be a very strong picture.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize also for the confusion.
No.
coming or Zoom?
Oh.
We realized it would be been very difficult to manage live streaming you and the audience.
Sure. Listen, I would rather be in person. I would take this any day over Zoom or virtual, so I'm good. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be well, everybody.
Deborah, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
She was fantastic. We are very lucky. Very lucky.
Leadership from somewhere, you know, and that's where she gets it from you, and we thank you for that.
I think that's an outstanding report.
It puts us in a
Especially
good
from
spot.
an external.
Yeah. It puts us in a good spot for next year.
Especially if we're gonna be facing, so, you know, you pray for rain, that rainy days don't happen, but then you pray extra that you have what it takes to handle it, and you give us that opportunity to start off with, and hopefully, you know, the government has a little more, you know, to help that out. So thank you.
You really are amazing. Excellent.
Really unbelievable. Great. Okay. So, moving down, go for the status of the hybrid model.
Okay, so, actually, I'll open this up because I have some feedback. So we, just wanted to, I'm going to ask Mrs. Heck to give a little report about how we're doing. But we also had put out, initially when we offered parents the option of going full remote, we asked people to make a commitment to either keep their child out for planning purposes, either to the first marking period, and we used the high school date for the first marking period. The elementary schools are on trimesters, so we used December 10th as the date in order to be well prepared for students coming back, making sure that we have appropriate spacing, the desks organized in a particular way, ordering any additional barriers that we need to order. We sent out a survey last week. Friday was the deadline. We sent it out to parents who indicated that they wanted their children out through November 10th. There's also a group of parents that opted to keep their children out until the end of the first marking period, which is the end of January. End of the first semester, which is the end of January. So this survey went out to those parents. We did not get all of the responses yet. Our parent coordinator is following up on making personal phone calls to parents, but right now we have, I would say, less than 50% of our students who would like to come back, depending upon the building and the grade level. So I think there's a total of about 135 students on remote, and this tapped into, I don't remember the exact number, but it was, I think it was the smaller percentage, right, Lee, of families that wanted the first marking period. So it was about 30% of all of the students that were out, and about half of those now are, we don't have all the data in, but it's not a very large number. We have 20 children definitely coming back at the junior senior high school. We have 16 that are pending. We have 7 that are definitely returning to Rain, and 6 that are pending, and we have, and these are non-responses, so it's not out of the whole full number. These are just non-responders yet. And we have 6 definite coming back to center with 3 families still pending. So we think that's great that parents are feeling comfortable enough to want to send their kids back. I think there's various different reasons why parents choose to do that. Some are social reasons, some are feeling a feeling of things are going well. We did have the one case where we needed to close, but I think we're in as good shape as any other district, at least across Long Island. It depends on the area, the size, and a lot of factors go into it, but we've so far had only that one case. We have had some cases where family members had become ill, and so employees needed to quarantine, but those were contained and no one else was infected. And so I think, we are in good shape. And so I'll just turn it over to Mona for a minute.
I think in many ways, we are now sort of settling into the school year. There were so many unknowns as we began, but now we've gotten into a routine. School looks a lot like school normally looks, and it looks a lot different than it normally looks. We're right now in high school. It's very quiet. We're not using lockers, and we have the students in the building each day. It's a very different environment. I think we talk a lot about how proud we are of our district, our faculty and staff, and we should be, because there's a lot of reason to be. And I think we've done this really, really well, and it's very challenging. And I don't think, as much as we've settled in, I think those challenges continue. Having hybrid learners who are not in every day, and having some fully remote learners who are not in at all, is a unique challenge, and it's a significant challenge, especially when we start the school year that way, trying to create relationships and get into the routine of school with the challenges. But I think we should be very proud of what we're doing. School is moving forward, instruction is moving forward. There's a lot of creativity going on, and a lot of the barriers and challenges have been overcome, but some of the technology challenges, as much as we have a terrific infrastructure for technology, there are daily glitches here and there, and we want to have access for all students at all times, and it doesn't always happen. But again, overall, I think we're doing a really significant amount of work to make this work well, and it's going. But we need to get students back in school eventually and get back to the normal school. But I think our teachers, our TAs, everybody's really stepped up and done a tremendous amount of work to make this work.
I think we meet regularly with the teachers union leadership, and I think it is hard for our teachers. I think they are struggling. And I think one of the main reasons they struggle, and I say this all the time, is try not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Because teachers want things to be perfect. They want their classrooms to run the way they've always run. They want to continue to do great things in their classrooms, to do cooperative activities, to work, have children work in groups, for them to meet in small groups, to individualize instruction. And some of those things are just not possible due to COVID, due to the pandemic, due to the health and safety restrictions and the social distancing that we have to put in place. And that, I think, is what's challenging teachers. Of course, they want to know that they're connecting with all students, and that's hard. We knew that our students who were on a full remote model would not be getting the same experience that children who were coming in on alternate days would be able to get, because we can't replicate that. We cannot, it's impossible to replicate that one-to-one, face-to-face instruction that our kids who are on the hybrid model can have every other day, or every 2 days. They may not have it every day, but the teacher has a relationship with them when they are in the classroom. And when they are in the classroom, the quality of the instruction we know is better. It's present, it's personal, it's physically, there's just no alternative for being physically present. We all know it because we've experienced all the Zoom meetings. And Mr. Volkes just said, we like in person because you connect differently. And so it continues to be a challenge. And thank you, Mona, for outlining how things are going. But we are hearing and seeing that some districts are beginning to bring students back full time in, bringing all students in and not having a hybrid model. We know that Woodmere is working toward that. I don't know when that's going to start. Belmar Merrick has at their high school level, I believe also as an aside, the Commissioner of Health, children go to Dr. Eisenstein, they go to Belmar Merrick, so I'm sure they're doing things well. And we are looking into and speaking with those districts about how they did it, how it's going. We discussed this, are discussing this with our teachers union. They had done an internal survey, asking people how safe they felt, teachers how safe they felt, and on the Likert scale of 1 to 5, everyone answered, I don't have the exact numbers, but 3 and above, which is a good sign. Teachers, for the most part, feel safe in school. And so we really want to look at if this is something that the board would like to explore. Our numbers are good and they're stable. We know that, in our neighboring district, Lawrence has had to close. I think that's a very unique situation that maybe is specific to the Lawrence community. I've been monitoring our numbers on Newsday and looking on the state website. There's now a website where you can, with the yellow, orange, and red phases, it's a new designation for school districts to determine whether you're not just districts, but communities, whether you're in a red zone and what would happen if you're in an orange zone, what the restrictions are, and then a yellow zone. And we were just notified that if a school district is in a yellow zone, we would need to, we're not clear how we would do that, but do testing, COVID testing with 20% of our student and staff population every week. Luckily, we're not, but there's, on the website, it's great, you just put the address in, and it says you have no designation. So I've been checking every day. It gives you a quick response that we're in a good place. It's hard, you have to watch the numbers by community. And it's not by school district because, not like us, but some school districts span a couple of different communities. I know, Baldwin is part of Oceanside, a little bit of Rockville Center. We're part of Lynbrook and part of East Rockaway, but, we're pretty much a smaller community. So, in order to do this, we would need to look at the costs associated with purchasing additional barriers, what that would look like in the classrooms, and again, wanting to get feedback from parents. We'll probably do a survey. I know we had discussed last week when I met with our vice president about doing a survey for our students and our students and our parents as to how they see things going, because we haven't heard from them. We really wanted an opportunity to get things up and running. It wasn't easy in the beginning, but as Mona just said, we now have a rhythm, and although things are not perfect, they're pretty good. And we want to see how parents are feeling, what their comfort level is. As teachers said, I should say, our union president said that our teachers are meeting with all students except for the remote students. They're just not meeting with them all the time at once. But they are meeting with all of the students except for the 130 or so that are on remote learning every other day. And so they are exposed, and we are following the rules. And I have to tell you, the kids are unbelievable. Walk through the halls. I have never seen a student without a mask on. They are terrific. Well, we have wonderful kids that follow the rules. The hallways they follow the social distancing as best they can. Obviously it's easier with half the population in the building, but we would like to discuss the possibility if we wanted to consider bringing more grades back. We have a K-3 right now. We know that in and of itself presents some challenges for teachers because we have one teacher alternating in 2 classrooms. That's an extra challenge for those teachers, literally going back and forth every day. And would we maybe start by collapsing those grades together and having sufficient barriers? Schools, other districts are telling us that they're using about 3 to 4 feet, rather than the 6 feet when the barriers are in place. So it allows for more students to be in the class.
Would the barriers be required? Or is that just additional
They are,
that we feel is a good idea?
no, they are.
So they are. They are.
They're still, yeah, they have not relaxed the social distancing requirement. So the barriers are like it's a mitigating strategy to mitigate the need for the 6 feet. You know, the one thing the state has not done that they've not designated to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but I've never seen it, a percentage the way restaurants and gyms do, 25, 50%. So schools are not bound by that occupancy percentage, which is why some districts are able to bring all kids back in. We just don't have the space nor the personnel to split everyone in the way that we did the K-3
Yes.
students. So it would be really the only way to go about it would be to purchase the dividers.
We
So-
have to rethink the classrooms. Right now, split, because we have barriers, social distancing, we needed 2 classes. So we would probably have to use more desk barriers around from the desk and possibly alongside of that here in the high school cafeteria, so that the rows would be closer, the desks would be closer, so that we could collapse some of the sections that are divided into 2 classrooms. And that would be like the first step to see how that works, bringing all the kids into one classroom, and teaching in one classroom. Kind of back to normalcy for the kids' point. Start to consider bringing one grade at a time.
I think there were a lot of predictions that this wasn't necessarily going to work, and people were, not taking real bets, but, what would it be like? Oh, we're gonna all be closed by October, and that didn't happen.
Right.
Not. We'll,
No, I think we need to start exploring the possibilities of bringing everybody back and starting with the elementary, or continuing, I really should say, because that's where we start. K-3 is back every day. So if we try to continue with 4, 5, 6 and move that, we're getting a better read to things are starting, hopefully, where more confidence is gained every day. One thing I think we all know that East Rockaway does real well, and that's social emotional well-being of people. But we know that if you're not here presently every day, it's hard to really gauge that. So, I'm all for trying to see what it would cost us. Again, hoping that our meetings with government officials will start bringing in, again, the elections coming up. I think we're getting closer to that election date. Maybe it'll be money released. If we're working on numbers this way, and we're gathering from the parents, from the students, from the teachers union, how comfortable everybody is, let's keep that moving so that the tide is still moving forward.
Moving parallel.
And then hopefully we'll get a big break, and maybe we'll see the monies come through, and then we'll be able to purchase everything we need to purchase. But at least we have everything in place. Just look at it. Here's how I look at it. You did such a marvelous job, okay, getting us to where we were in September to open up the building. We want to still do that marvelous job moving forward, getting everybody back in. So if we sort of like just wander now and don't do our homework to do everybody, we're sort of like, just saying, okay, we're good. But I think we can still move, because there are districts out there that are moving it. So why not try and see where we can? We don't have real numbers of all these weigh-ins that we're going to look at, then we can't really guesstimate. But now we can really make a good estimate where we should be. We get to know that. So I would encourage Lisa that you continue to work in the paths that you are, that you just said, okay, with those 3 groups. And then also, Jackie, if you could continue, I know it's painstaking, as I keep looking out this auditorium, and I'm saying to myself, how'd you figure out these numbers and every other row and this and that? But the bottom line is, we all know that we're here for one reason, it's for kids. And that's why, it works that way. So I would appreciate, I don't know how the rest of the board members feel.
100%. So moved. I think that one of the really important things also is making sure, that as we are being transparent with all the parents and the residents and everything, is making sure we give the parents enough time to plan and organize with their work and their job and their schedules. And I'm sure it's not going to happen overnight, but at the same time, just maintaining that level of transparency so that the parents can plan accordingly. I mean, staying home from work and then traveling here, going there, it's a lot on the parents and everybody else, on all of us, I'm assuming. So I think that's super important. Having everyone really informed about what we're thinking and how we're going to do it and what the phasing process looks like. And like I said, I think the one major thing is pulling together costs, like the cost of what it's going to take to do it. So hopefully we can move quickly and efficiently and make this happen. It's really need a sense of normalcy.
And I think that's the great work that PTAs could really get involved. They want to get involved, less meetings we've had. I think this is a perfect time for them to really get involved with us. And then the communication committee's coming in now. So we have a lot of things moving in this direction. Let's keep it moving.
I think, we knew that planning for any of our students coming back we needed time. We couldn't put that survey out and say, okay, are you coming back next week? Okay, come on in, because the classrooms we needed to make sure. At the high school, it's complicated. They go to 9 different periods, and so every child, we have to look at those 9 classes for every student and make sure that the capacity, doesn't exceed, the regulations with, again, using the barriers as mitigation, and that's why we have those, and now Jackie can start to work on ordering barriers, because they do have to be made. They are custom made, most of them, and
One of the versions, if we go with the ones here, what we have here. I've already reached out to the vendor and asked them, would you use the material that we use, just barriers that we're going to use? Yes, the one, because if we're going to bring everybody into one classroom, chances are most classrooms will not be using that quantity. That allowed us to have an inexpensive way to address 50%. When it's a full percent, we're going to be barriers, beside barriers. So we put in a call already, to see if they could use some of the material we have to create barriers, so save us costs.
No,
So we're
great.
working on that too.
Yeah.
Just try it, and that's why it phase in would be good. We could buy some outright for the material, and then we put them in the classrooms, and then take the old barriers off and send them out with that material. And try to save money and yet address what we want.
It's a great idea.
and that will take time, and so that's the phasing that Mr. Lopez, that you're talking about. It will happen naturally, because we can't do it any other way.
Right.
I will say that I'm still very concerned, and I brought this up in my meeting with Congresswoman Rice. I know Mr. Lopez, I think you're going to be meeting next week with her. I'm very disturbed that the costs for the barriers, which were the highest costs that we sent you in the board update, are not going to be covered by FEMA. I think that is incredibly unfair and unbelievable. Those are necessary emergency costs for us to educate our students. The same thing with
The fathers,
foggers.
that's
Although they were not as expensive as the barriers, but a fogger, I mean, that's an essential piece of equipment that we need in each building in order to clean every day. We use those foggers every single day in every single building. And so in all 3 of our buildings, and it's unbelievable. It's not acceptable. And so we have to really make that known and advocate, however we can, that these costs be covered. We are, at the suggestion of Congresswoman Rice, I have sent, it seems that the town of Hempstead had received a large amount of money, and it was suggested to us that we forward some of those expenses to the town of Hempstead for their evaluation and possible reimbursement. I have taken the first steps to do that, to make sure that they're qualifying expenses. I haven't heard back yet, and we'll continue to pursue that for a possible reimbursement of some of the funds. It's just it's a tremendous burden for the local school districts to take on without any hope you know, and it sounds great, our audit report was great, but how long will that fund balance sustain all of the costs that we're going to have?
course.
So we will start looking into that.
Okay, next on the agenda is the budget development process. Jackie?
Yes, so I ended out a budget timeline. Does everybody have theirs with you? The only thing I really changed, shall I say, I added was just, more discussion started early. Usually we start, I have copies here, everybody would like them. What I changed this year was we usually started the budget discussion in December. And this year, obviously, we're starting in October for obvious reasons. You see the highlighted ones, basically those are the 3 areas that really, I'm starting everything quicker. The business office always started in October, right after the audit, we start the budget. But we didn't really start discussions here with the board or with the public until around December. This year, I think it's important we start now. We start talking about the potential state aid cuts that they're talking about. Again, as you know, we saved a ton of money over the spring. We earmarked that to get us through any difficulties that we may see in the school year we're in right now, additional cost of COVID, and the potential state aid cuts. So that we wouldn't have to reduce any kind of program this year. It didn't make sense because we didn't know what potential help for us in the spring. We still don't know what the future holds for us, but the economy is not doing well, especially the state of New York. So we want to start discussing this a lot earlier. So what I will start to do now when I return next week is I will roll salaries. That means everybody's contractual salary will roll forward. That's always my first step. And then I will report back where we are just rolling the salary. What does that mean? What kind of money? Because my concern is not the 2021 school year. My concern is the 21-22 school year. Maintaining the program is always going to be a concern. What the state aid look like next year? Will they freeze it at last year's? Well, that even freezing is a problem because we rely on that state aid increase to help cover contractual increases because our tax cap doesn't necessarily cover a large amount of money. So I will be working on rolling the salaries and looking at the impact for the Social Security, the health insurance, all those contractual big benefit amounts in the month of November. And then I'll start to study where the CPI appears to be falling and kind of come up with an estimate of what kind of additional revenue we could possibly get from tax levy. But really, nobody really knows where the state's going as far as state aid. And there's a lot of fear out there that we will not get an increase in state aid and we may get an decrease in state aid in 21-22. That is what our fund balance and our reserves will be used for, to help maintain the program. We need to start to talk about it. Because it's going to be a really difficult year. So that's where you see that the budgets will be going out next week to the buildings and the administrators, various departments. I've asked for them to give it to me before the holidays so that we have a holiday recess to look at it. And January is our first work session, but we will be discussing at least 5 or 10 minutes each work session forward to just give you an idea of the different, actually where we are. Okay, here we are, we roll the salaries, we roll the benefits. This is where we are. We increased our budget by X amount of money. And then hopefully I'll have in December, I'll have a really good idea where we are with our CPI and our next study.
Jackie, you're going to start with a rollover with the administrators for next year, where you're just going to say, it is what it is, because how can they come in with budgets that, do the work for things that they conceive might need, they might need, but it's going over the norm that we have right now. So are they going to roll over from last year?
Well, with the building projects, it's based on enrollment numbers as per the USO requirements. So each building is allocated a certain amount of money per student, so it is the same dollar amount.
Yep.
So based on the enrollment, their budget will be based on that. So in the two elementary buildings, enrollment has decreased significantly, so both of them probably will be lower. The high school looks like it's going to increase slightly, so it'll be slightly higher. The departmental budgets, like the athletics budget, his coaching salaries and stuff is not really part of his budget because his salaries is outside. But the other parts of the budget will be given as a rollover. And then if there's needed money due to some kind of contractual increases, then we will have to. Everybody's going to be asked to keep it flat to the best of their ability.
And generally, that's how you start out.
So I always-
And everybody writes a wish list, and Jackie keeps the wish list.
Right.
I always have the wish list, and then we add things and or subtract them, or if there's some things that we could afford this year, we buy them. So this year we may not, that wish list may remain intact as a wish list. Each year we try to decrease it, do as much as we can. Yeah, everybody will be asked to remain flat, departmental, unless there's a contractual obligation in which they can't find those.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for, again, being proactive, getting us out in front the best we can as we see things unroll from the government side. Money might come in, might not come in. At least we're ahead of the game to make the adjustments at the end that you're so good at. So thank you.
Today's Prime Day, maybe the CPI will go up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. Well, we're helping them.
Every day since COVID.
Friday.
It's just arriving daily. Yeah, with very good buys today.
There are. Yes.
Okay, we have the state controls report for extra costs and activity fund, report examination number 2020M-85.
So we ended this out last week, reader review. It was about a year and a half now, that we had the Office of State Control that required us that they would be doing an audit. They do an audit every 3 to 5 years in school districts. It was our turn. And what they do is they come in and they sample each financial area of the school district, and then determining after they look at it and they see what they feel, whether it was substantiated, any kind of expenses, and what kind of risk factor based on each area is going to pull. What they determine is what area they're going to look at further based on risk assessment. And they determined that the student activity fund was the highest risk in their analysis, which I think is a tremendous outcome. It shows that the other areas of the school district they didn't feel was as high a risk.
Jackie won't take the credit, but that's really significant because they don't come in like the internal auditors do and pick an area on a cycle to look at. They come in and look at everything and they test all the areas. And so just the fact that this was the only area they found that was at risk or a risk area is really significant. We had an audit, I think it was my second or third year here, and it was also not terrible, but we had some more significant areas that were of concern. So I think this in and of itself is really something to congratulate Jackie on, that this was the only area that they identified to look at.
So they did look at it, and they look at it for a 2-year period. 17, 18, 18, 19 was their audit years. 17, 18, the student activity account fund was not an area that my office had looked at. I started in late 2016. So we had identified that was an area we knew we needed to strengthen controls. And so we put a bunch of new procedures and controls in place for the 18-19 school year. So this basically covered 1 year of which it operated under the old procedures, and 1 year in which it was starting the new procedures and protocols. So they were here for several months, maybe 8 or 9 months. And then they go back to their office and they start to look at their reports. And usually what happens, I've been through several of these audits in the past, is they will sit with us and they will go over what they call their exception list with myself and my team and show us what they found. Because of COVID, that didn't happen. So the first time we saw the exceptions was when we all got this report last year. So you'd see that there was quite a bit of exceptions on backup from money collected. So what we did is we asked them to identify each and every deposit that they had pulled and earmarked as an exception. What we found was 75% of the ones that the 102 that they identified were in the 17-18 school year, which did not surprise me. The 18-19 though did surprise me. So what we did is we pulled an archive because we don't have enough room in the district to store all records. Our records go to storage facilities. We pulled the 18-19 records, each and every one that was identified, and we found several discrepancies. We didn't feel that they were inadequate, and so we contacted the state patrol's office and said, we don't see what we've done wrong, and that's a problem because obviously we continue to do it wrong because to us it seems right. So we'd like a little further discussion. So we pulled the packets together, and the the auditor of the control's office came, picked up the packet, and started to review them himself, so that we can discuss it with the district and the auditor to see if maybe there was some misunderstanding, or if we have to change what we're doing, because clearly what they've selected is what is part of the practice that we've built.
And we have our own internal auditors assist us with developing all of those procedures.
And they are procedures that I've used for many years in the prior district. They have passed the Office of State Controller's audit in the past. I think there might have been a little bit of a confusion. It had to do with triple pressed numbered receipts. You saw that written up? And yes, we gave that every time we receive cash, we issue a triple receipt, so that the number is in the receipt book and it's attached to the deposit. But we don't do that when we receive checks, because we have copies of every check that we receive. So if we got 15 checks, there was no copy of the receipt, because we don't give the receipt for a check. We don't feel like necessary. The check is the receipt. And that's the procedure we've been following all along, and that's those significant number of the exceptions for only checks. So we've got a little bit of a discrepancy as to what we feel was an exception. And the lead auditor said that he would like to look at it himself, because maybe it was just there. So we haven't had the exit interview. The report obviously is only draft. It will remain draft until we have an exit interview, and that exit interview will be delayed at this point until they finish going back to 4 buildings. I did not look at 17-18. It could have been, some of those other ones could have been in the 17-18 too, as well. But at this point, I knew 17-18 was something that I needed to have reviewed. And I really was concerned that our new procedures that we've been following now, this is our 3rd year, were the right procedures. So I really focused on that. That's where we are with that.
So the two things, their recommendations, is really what I want to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
They have the faculty council and the faculty auditor that they're recommending. What's your feel on that, Jackie?
We had faculty advisor, we didn't have both in my life. Actually, like 2 prior districts, we did have a faculty. A faculty treasurer that oversaw and took in and kept their own records. I mean, I do believe that each club should have their own records. That is a part of the club, and the advisor should be teaching the children to maintain their records. But we did, in my prior two districts, I did in fact have one in the building that everybody reported to, as opposed to coming to the business office. It kind of gave that second layer of, this is like a second person to oversee it.
Who served in that role?
A teacher. So
Were
we
they
had,
paid?
yes, they got a stipend. Yes, both districts, both of my colleagues. They were larger districts, but they both did have stipends back. And that person was the go-to person. All the advisors would go to them, and everything would be through them, and then they would be also tracking us. And we would all be comparing. We'd be comparing our records to their records. We each have our own set of books. The auditors looked at both sets of books to make sure we were in sync. Reports were verified. We do have monthly reports that we send to the clubs from my office, but we would compare the faculty advisor would have a monthly report that they would sign off that would come from us each month. And then that faculty advisor would then deal with each individual.
And each building would have a faculty advisor, or you have one for the whole district?
We had, in my prior district, we had one at the middle school and one at the high school, because we had 2 separate buildings. We never had one of the elementary buildings, because that wasn't necessary. In the district before that, 2 high schools, we had one at each high school. So it was really here, we don't need one. It's much smaller. One per building at the secondary.
Jackie, are these recommendations requirements?
No, they're recommendations.
So if we decide to handle that in a different way,
It's not,
it's not something we'd be
it's not a
citing
moment,
for.
no, absolutely not.
The one thing I do like is that one of the things that everybody understands, because in athletics, we used to do a lot of fundraising. And rules have changed since my time. But the one thing that really hurts anybody doing this is the fact of all of the work that the coach or moderator of the club has to take on beside do the good work with kids. And it takes away from the good work with kids all the time. So when I saw this, and I know that when I worked in the city, one of the things we had was called a COSA. And they talking to Kristen, they had somebody up at Malvern who does this. And I think it's money well spent in the fact that you have a faculty advisor, faculty council, whatever you want to call it. That was the one that was now taken from all the clubs and everybody in there. It makes the traffic in the business office lower. It makes the traffic for the coach or moderator lower because they have somebody now who's a student in the area and is taking a real vested interest because they're getting a little stipend to do it also. So, one of the things I'd like the board to think about for the future is, as we're going through this, Jackie gives us more from the actual audit itself, is that, maybe something we should consider to lessen the load on those moderators and coaches who are doing a yeoman's job already in trying to get the extra for the kids. And there's always extra. Everybody wants the fanfare. We all want, these Rockaway rocks, labels and stuff. And it's all good, but it really does become very, very time-consuming. And Jackie, it's a difficult task a lot of times for your office to constantly go after those reports and get them in and so on and so forth with everything else. I mean, the monies, we looked at those 3 years of monies. They're hard monies.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money that comes in. It's a lot of money. So to me, it justifies having somebody who, because you have audits coming in, someone who's really versed in it. How you guys feel about that?
Would it be someone with sorry.
No.
I was just gonna say, would you choose from someone who's currently working in the district? Oh, it would be
Like
someone.
in my school, it's the business teacher.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Makes sense.
a lot of money. To freeze up the coaches or to spend the
So-
time.
Gives them more confidence to do these things.
What, can you explain, it sounds like it's being described a little different than what I'm used to. Can you explain what the person does that you were talking about now, Vern, that we shared with Mr. Bolton?
So it is the business teacher, and basically all of the clubs, anytime they have money, and I can only speak to what I see in the yearbook. So the yearbook, we have money coming into the yearbook, and now the money has to be turned into the business office. He gets all the money and collects it, meets with the person in charge of that club or that sport, and they have to fill out, I guess, a certain type of a receipt, and then he brings everything over to the business office, and he is basically the intermediary.
So everything is, so that's how I know the advisor, so that the money doesn't go, the money is collected, but the student treasurer or the student, because the club has,
The club still has to do,
still has to be
still
involved.
does what it's supposed to
Yes,
do,
because
because that's
they
a
are-
requirement
Yes.
for the charter of the club,
Yes.
is that they have to be responsible.
Right, and the kids are learning how to manage
Right,
that
and
money.
those children are always in our office.
Exactly.
We always have the children and the advisors a lot of times when the children don't understand them in our office. And yes, and they bring their paperwork in. So instead of coming to us, it comes to the faculty advisor.
Right, so,
That's
or like
exactly
I
how
say,
it happens.
it's, you need money for your class to go buy decorations and whatnot, you need to put that request in, it goes through him, he goes to the business office, and then comes back.
So he's there to advise the student.
Yes.
The paperwork's not complete, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
Yes, and then they go.
And
Exactly.
it gets done in a more timely, and no, negative on your office because you're doing a million things, but it's done on a more timely basis because guess what? They hunt that person down the hallways, they find that they want to get that moving. So it works a lot more smoothly in the transition.
I can find out, I can look at my teacher contract, and see what the stipend is for that position. And I did reach out to the person that's doing it, just asked him for a job description, if he happened to have one. So he was going to reach out to the club advisor and see if he, like the overall club advisor, and see if he had a job description. And there, just so we have something to look at compared to.
Would that also be easy for your office, dealing with one person as opposed to?
Oh,
bunch,
yeah,
or-
oh, absolutely.
So it's a win-win.
Absolutely. There's a lot of activity in the business
Sure.
office, a lot of, you know, it's very crowded, and, you know, now we have them staying at home, and it does get very crowded at times. And that is, it sounds like exactly how they function in our fast food restaurants. And then that person brought the money, after they brought everything was checked.
Exactly.
Is that an hourly wage?
No, it's a stipend.
It's actually an annual stipend.
Into it.
Okay, moving along. Athletic complex, paving stone walkway and fundraising.
So this is an easy one, I think. Mr. Barth came to us with the idea as we developed the new athletic complex that at the entranceway, which you also have pictures of, which was beautiful, it's going to be beautiful, the renderings were lovely, that we create a brick pathway where people can purchase the bricks and have them engraved. Kind of as a fun, would be a fundraiser, but it would also add to the aesthetic beauty of the, and I think people would take a lot of pride in that. So if the board is in agreement with that, Mr. Grillo said that he would incorporate that into the design. And as we get closer, you know, we can start to share that and share the renderings out and start to fundraise for that. People can buy a brick, have someone's name put on it, and really enhance the beauty as well as the significance for people in the community of the new athletic complex.
Well, it's a great idea.
Things I think that you're gonna have a lot of bricks that people.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, we're probably gonna need a
You know,
really
all
big
day
well in this community. What we had talked about with the PTA, in my old district, they did it in the front. They had, like a concrete area, much like, you know, we have the grassy areas, we have the path, like, we do have opportunities to expand it. So we had talked to the PTA about it, and the high school PTA was interested, and then I'm not really sure, it kind of just fell off the radar. But, you know, that's also, if we wanted to do that simultaneously, you know, if you see that there's a huge interest, kind of the overflow might be that maybe people want the brick, it could be in the oval, anywhere. That would be significant and not limited to just athletes, it could be in any part of the school. And it's really not that hard to do. Even take up some, rather than break up the concrete, take away some of the grass, you know, not huge parts of the grass, but small parts of the grass around the walkway or on the walkway. So I really think knowing this community, it would have a lot, I think everybody would break. It's like the chairs in the auditorium. So.
What would the funds go towards?
That would, if you ask Mr. Barth, I'm sure the athletic program. I think the music, if we expanded it, you know, and considered other locations, it could go to other, it could go to the school, it could go, you know, divide it up, scholarships, right? You know, I think it would, that, we didn't even get that far, because we wanted to know if the board was interested.
Right.
Yeah, I think anybody who ever played on that field would buy a brick.
Exactly.
100%.
They did this at Bethany when they brought the field in, and it was a sellout within weeks. And they have a real big one now, real big one. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay, great. So this just came in, I thought I would share it with you. These are two renderings that Mr. Grillo sent over today. So I thought maybe you wanted to look up one. One for everybody.
You got enough?
We have enough?
There's two.
Good.
There's two different ones with each picture, but here.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Exactly.
The one that's on the top looks better than the one on the
Which one's this
So the
one?
end
white
zones,
one?
This one.
Yeah, you gotta have orange.
Yeah,
We're all picking the same one.
yeah, absolutely.
and I think there's other features that you probably can better assess as well.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about in the first place. Actually, remember that.
How do you feel about that orange going through the infield of the baseball?
I know, I keep looking at it.
That's scary.
It's scary to me, too, Joe, and,
What was
I
that?
agree. So you have the orange here that would run, though, and you see where it's running right through your baseball infield, and it's running right here. So the softball's not bad, it's on the outskirts, it's fine.
I see, yeah.
But baseball really is gonna be right in the middle, smack in the middle.
I would almost leave, the end zone is fine, but the outer side. And we talked about that white coach block section too.
We did it that.
So you would want this cut to end there, and there, and then this all be green.
Correct,
take
yeah.
away this orange line.
Yep.
And the white line.
And then my opinion also would be that the rocks in the end zone will be black, off with white. Black and orange, not black and white. Yeah, personal opinion.
Well, black would be, here's why black is gonna be better too. I don't know if it's, and maybe you guys know better. The reflection of a baseball on a black background versus an orange, what do you think of that? You know, is there a difference in that, or is it really the same? You know, I'm just trying to figure the contrast, because again, that end zone, you see where the end zone runs, right? It's running right into the first, right over first base.
Yeah.
Right over it. You know, I'm thinking that, is it, I don't know. I don't know what to say with that. Could that be filled during the season? Could that be painted?
That's not a bad thought process either.
You know?
Being able to
Good
try and
question.
switch those specific little pieces somehow, you know, during the in-season.
You mean pick up the turf and,
But then aren't you also gonna have the cross playing there?
You will.
So then if you had pieces picked up, you're losing a part of the cross field.
Well, the field itself would run with these lines here. So that's the field itself. So we're just talking about the painting here. Fill paint. So the fill paint is a thing that I would be concerned about. Did Mr. Lawson you check, Lisa?
they were mailed out today, just late this afternoon, and he did not weigh in yet.
Why don't we get some weigh-in from them and then look at it again? I mean, the
I love
other
the end
one,
zones, it's just.
I love them too, but
Yeah,
you see what happens there, right?
Yep.
But I'm just wondering, Joe, if like during the course of the football season, right, that couldn't be painted orange. Leave it at the white and just be painted orange or black, whatever you want, you know, regular field paint. Season's over, it's not there for the spring because it wears right off. You know? And that's how it works on field turf.
Yeah, if they can match the orange, and
You
it's a
know?
good idea.
They do that on field turf. The Giants, look at the Giants Jets, right, when they turn that field over. all the time.
Yeah, you
They're
don't have,
constantly painting back over.
Yep.
So
it's a good idea, if that's an
But
option, it's a good idea.
why don't we let David, you know, and really weigh in, since he hasn't seen it, it's really not fair. Maybe they make these.
He saw it, I mean, he just didn't answer
Didn't
yet.
weigh in yet.
Yeah, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to share it with you.
Maybe him and the coach could weigh in. You have our concern, right? Just to let him know. You know what, tell him to get it.
Wait a minute, like, huh? Forget it,
I'm just distracted. No, I get it, it's this field here, and
Yeah,
the way the third,
exactly.
yeah.
You know?
First base,
First base, that's
first
right.
base, first. Yeah, I get it, totally. I didn't realize you could even paint it. I'm thinking, I was still stuck on
It's so
what we
much
were gonna do here. I figured we would just be marking that during football season, because you need, right? Don't you need to know where the lines are, you know, where the field.
Right, but they sew them in, so they sew all that in.
Right, but this you would do even in football season, you would just
You'd run
that in.
right.
That's what I was still thinking. I kind of get it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
We get it, we'll let you explain it, Mr. Moss.
There you
I
go.
just don't want to get it wrong.
I just want to take the pleasure away from you. I know how important this is.
How about, is the infield dirt brown or is it orange? It's gonna be orange, and that's the other orange, right?
Where the cutouts are, Joe, you mean? Yeah.
Will that be the same orange?
Yeah, that would be the same one.
I like
Yep.
it.
Okay.
It's coming along.
COVID-19 heroes recognition.
So I know we had talked about this, being, the conversation came out of board recognition night, and you feeling you would like to recognize others, and so we brought it back to the whole administrative team. They all felt, to be honest, a little uncomfortable with selecting one or two people and highlighting them, because they feel that everybody really did an outstanding job, and everybody went out of their way, and people are continuing to do that. And, sometimes singling people out can make other people feel uncomfortable. And so we talked a little bit about it. How else could we do it? And it was suggested that we maybe go and ask each unit to pick someone. And I got some feedback on that, and they felt equally. I didn't speak to all the units, but I spoke to a couple of units, and they said, well, that may not go so well either. And so I had thought that maybe, and again, we don't have to do it next week because it doesn't have to be the same time. COVID is still going on. Hopefully it'll go away soon, but maybe, just one night recognizing in general all of the groups by either asking each of you to say a few words about the custodians, the teachers, I think it certainly help you with that, and recognizing all of them and being specific as to why they're heroes, and doing a small speech. We talked about the possibility of I left mine home today. Do you have your Jimmy badge?
Oh, no, mine's on my desk.
Have them do videos.
It might be a gift you have the kids do. Have them, how they did the Flipgrid type of thing, videos, have them do something like that, where they're the ones talking about it, making it almost like providing an assignment and then presenting it type of thing. So that would be a passive.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Good idea, I like it. It's better than us talking about it.
Yeah.
We're on the outside listening, I like it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You know how you opened the school year, remember last year?
Yes.
And the kids,
Yeah.
it was power.
I love that.
It was power.
Yeah.
They all presented, they had the teacher's name on them. And they presented, that was their teacher, that was who they, the role model, and they taught. It was powerful.
Good.
Quick statements, they weren't long and lengthy, just real quick, and the more the better. But I love that idea. I love that idea. And they could do that, even, as far as like doing some, I don't want to use the word, like a spot commercial, but it's.
PSA.
PSA, thank you, that's the word. Like a PSA, some guidelines to
It's
give
a
them.
great idea.
And they do their own PSA on their own phones, and they just send them all in, and we string them together, it's great.
And again, I think it would be nice to say that the Board of Education has, asked the students to put this presentation together. So you are recognizing, it's the board's recognition, because it was your idea. So it was the board's recognition of, and this is how we're demonstrating it.
Put that in there.
Okay.
That's great.
Hopefully we'll see, we'll see if we can do it November 9th.
Let's do it like after the election.
Our next meeting is after the election. 3 weeks.
Wow.
It's insane.
All right, snow day pilot. We knew this was all coming.
Okay.
We knew this was coming.
Okay, however, so we talked about this, and although it sounds like a wonderful idea, it sounds like a great idea, what would be necessary for us to do this is for every single student to have a device. Because we have K through 3 coming in, the only K through 3 students that have a device at home are the remote students. So we would actually then have to distribute, because we don't know when we're going to have a snow day. We can't anticipate it. We wait till the last minute. We're up at 4 a.m. The superintendent's group making a decision on the phone. And so we don't know. We always try not to. We try as hard as we can, especially Oceanside, is the whole that all the time. Her board is tough. That doesn't want a snow day. And so it would be really difficult to plan for. When we had the first closure in the high school and we went to remote learning, we discussed what would happen if we had to close one of the elementaries. Because of that reason, the K through 3 do not have a device at home. And so we did a survey to see how many families, have devices at home on their own that they would be able to use, that they wouldn't need to deploy, that we would need to deploy a device for them. And out of the parents who responded, there were 256 parents that responded, and 153 indicated that they have devices for their children, and 40% said they do not have a device for their child. Because if we were to go full remote on a snow day, one device would not be enough. The kids in 5 through 12 or 4 through 12 now that have devices would be on their device all day, because you would assume it would be like a regular remote day. We would go period by period and instruction would occur all day long except for lunchtime. And so there would need to be devices. My husband's office is, he works for a big law firm, and I always ask him what he has that he can give us. He's given us a lot of furniture through the years, all of Jackie's office, my chairs, and they donate a lot of things. So they're going to be donating, let's say 300 devices. We're going to pick up the first group of devices. So we will have backup devices because we were not sure when the Chromebooks were going to come. And if we did need to close down, we didn't have enough devices to give to every K-3 student. So luckily, we've not had to close school, but there would be, we figured we did have about 100 devices on hand, but these devices will be picking up little by little. We're getting the first group on Friday, will really help us. But do we just give everyone a device and let it sit at home in the event of a snow day? And I'm just surprised that the state education department is considering this, because today we were discussing it. Upstate, Betty Rosa, I don't know if you read the update, their priorities for the state education department is equity in the digital divide. And so clearly there's still a digital divide upstate, and they're the places that have a lot more snow days than we do, and they do not have digital equity. They don't have, everybody does not have Wi-Fi, and every district does not have a device that's been deployed. So I don't think it's necessarily a priority for us. Our teacher's contract requires us to make up snow days, certain amount of snow days, and we have a lot of days in our calendar. So, we have 182 days in our teacher's contract, and we always have to find a place to take off a few days. Some districts, like Jericho's 186. Most districts have 183 or 184. In our last contract, we did try for more days, but instead of more days, we got making up the snow days. So if we call snow day in February, we just have one less holiday in May, when it's a critical time, right before the regions. So I couldn't see us deploying all of those devices to sit in people's homes, and then not being able to anticipate a snow day. If we close, we will make sure people have devices, and we will have time. Even if like we close on the dime, the next day people can come in and pick up devices. In a snow day, we can't do that. Although we did ask Lee to go out on a sled. His dog-driven sled, would he consider? He does everything else. Would he consider delivering devices? But we thought that might be different. So we're not recommending we participate.
I'm very happy about that.
I agree.
There's something to be said for kids to have that one snow day. We haven't had one in like a year.
Right, exactly. It's another point.
When you get that pull, and you just can go outside and play in the snow, and they get to be kids. And I feel like so much is taken away from them. If they get a snow day, they should go out and enjoy it.
It's the one day a year they love.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing better than that. The teachers, when I go in the classrooms to visit, sometimes they go, this is the lady that decides when you're not smoking. The kids are like, oh, the elementary kids, they're so happy.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready at this point in time to really say we can actually do this without trying to rush out these devices yet. Now, the ones haven't come in yet, so why don't we delay that in the future, next year, look at it again, fully ready at that point in time.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Use of district logo.
Okay, so, Jackie has received, a request from an individual who lives in Manila, not our school district, who is an entrepreneur. She has a small business, and she's been contacting Jackie repeatedly, asking for permission to use our logo on tie-dye masks, because she's made them for other places, and people have asked her, and she would like our permission to use our logo on those masks and sell them.
Does it benefit the school?
We're not recommending the cut to the chase.
I was gonna say, she went to PCA, that would be PCA fundraiser, that would be fantastic.
Right, but right now, she is, it's really, I think, an entity, a private entity, that she's asking to use our logo so that she can sell them to individual families. And I think it would cut into our fundraising opportunity.
Absolutely. I don't know enough about the person to, God forbid, they have some weird string of background, it just sounds like.
Who they're gonna sell it to.
Yeah, listen,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
just to at the same time, it's not working.
So there was, we did consult with our attorney, because we always do, to try and do our due diligence. It was a very convoluted answer. We possibly can do it. I just don't think we should do it.
It doesn't
I
matter.
don't think it would,
not.
right, because it's not going to benefit the district. And to enter into some kind of a business agreement with her where she would, I think that would be cumbersome, more work for Jackie. And,
Wish her luck, say sorry, yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we're gonna tell her no. Okay, thanks. But we did want you to be there.
Thank you. Transportation.
So I did, let you know a couple of weeks ago in the board update that we had found, that we had three families, 4 children that were riding the bus, to St. Agnes. I have a new person working in the business office doing the transportation, and, the applications come in April. We were all on, remote, and what she did when she got the applications was, and my fault, absolutely, because I had no idea that St. Agnes, half of the students, some areas within our district boundaries are less than 2 miles. So, what she did is check, do we transport to St. Agnes? Yes, we do, and she granted transportation. Only for it to be brought to our attention by another person in the district that did not get transportation because they did not apply for it, because they were aware that they were not eligible. So when it was brought to our attention, we of course looked into it, and then we went ahead and checked every child, and we did find 3 families. I did notify them. They all received notification. I haven't heard from any family yet. We did until the end of October, enough time for them, because legally we cannot transport. It did not cost the district any money because they were on a route that I paid for the van. It didn't matter as long as I hadn't received the van. It's the same price as the per seat route. It was a van route. So it didn't cost us any additional money, but we cannot. So I just wanted to know in case somebody came up to you and said, we apologize, we now have better procedures in place. And I'm a little bit more familiar with the fact that we have some schools, and we actually have 2 schools that we transport to. Some students, in the, some addresses in the district are less than 2 miles and some are not.
Jackie, when you say we can't do it, is that because of our 2-mile restriction and use of taxpayer funds? Is that what I just want to know in case somebody did.
We don't have the legal authority due to the board policy. Yes, the taxpayer funds. Once the board policy specifies something, we don't have the legal authority to override what has been, because transportation is approved by vendors, I mean, the residents, so we don't have the legal authority to override it.
Is there any liabilities to the end of the month if they're still on our bus? Like, God forbid something happens, there's no like legal
No,
liability?
no, they're
nothing like that,
allowed,
it's
we're allowed, you know, we found the error, we notified them in writing, we gave them the right to appeal, and, we're fine, because we are covered insurance
just-
wise.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
You know, but it didn't make, you know, they had gotten it in September, it only made sense to give them a couple of weeks to give them the opportunity to apply, because we were notified back in the spring that they were eligible, we didn't have enough time to find another one.
And normally, wouldn't we have somebody that goes over those schools, so to make sure that, you know, the ones who are outside that radius?
Well,
How do you do it?
what happened before we got the new person? She knew, the person before her knew which school districts had addresses that were partially or within a 2-mile radius. So the new person in my office, and me included, did not know that Lady Peace is one of them, and St. Agnes, of course, St. Agnes. But those 2 schools, some of our residents are over 2 miles, and some of them are not. And that's where the problem was. As we brought the applications in, she checked, did we transport to this school? If it was no, we never transported to the school, she then ran the mileage. But this time, she looked at, oh yeah, we transported to St. Agnes with 7 kids last year, and she granted it, not realizing, yeah, we may have said 7 kids, but this particular address is qualified for the 2 miles.
It's the same thing with the maximum, which is 15 miles, and so if you live in the north end of town, you might qualify to get transportation to a particular school, but if you live all the way down by the water, that can make a big difference, and you wouldn't qualify because you could exceed the 15 miles.
So it can be, especially and it is, you know, it's a lesson learned by myself. Nassau County is so much more condensed. 3 miles, we'd still be in the same district. You know, Suffolk County is so spread out. Nobody's 2 miles close unless you're within the state limits. So now we now know where all the schools are. She went through every single student regardless, ran the mileage and attached it to the application, and now it's a procedure. So we learn slowly. Does not happen again. Good part was no cost to the district, that was a big part.
And the last item on the agenda is superintendent's evaluation tool. So we had asked for that to be put on because the last time we met in the work session, we had just sent out the school board evaluation and really didn't have the opportunity to look through that and see how that would be. You also were just being indoctrinated into our present evaluation system for the superintendent. And just wanted to know if there was any feedback on that for board members of the school board's evaluation, right, versus the present way we're doing the evaluation. And is that something that you would rather wait a full year than your term coming, you know, as new board members you see this year through, like Kristen and Pete saw it last year, but you guys haven't. So really just feedback to see what direction you want to go.
I read through both of them, and again, I know I went through the first process. The boards one seems I don't want to say easier, but a little more defined as to what we're looking for, as opposed to what you guys are using. But I'm fine with it either. So like the boards one gave you a subject, and, you know, it gave you a listing of what was going on, and, you know, adequate, and it gave you a whole outline. I just seen, again, I don't want to say easier, just more defined.
Correct, and it actually allows the superintendent to choose those areas, right? And she's defined them with whatever she sets as goals that year, and then puts them in there.
But again, I'm fine with either way.
Yeah,
I feel the same way. I'm fine either way. The other one does seem a little bit more defined. Whatever you guys feel is the best as we're educators. We're gonna follow your
Yeah.
lead from that.
Like I said, it's the first time doing it, we'll follow you, Leo, whatever you guys would rather, to be honest with you.
so Pete and Kristen, you guys have gone through it, you know, both myself, what do you?
I like a rubric base, but I want to see what you feel comfortable with as well. You know, what looking at this, what you think.
I think this is more reasonable because the other one was so onerous, there were many elements. This has 5 areas, I think, with different components. I would like to maybe sit down and go through it with the president, vice president, and maybe pick which might be relevant. My only concern this year is with COVID, it seems so much has been, it may not happen the way, you know, we're trying very hard, we keep talking, we have this conversation every Monday. We have to get to the regular work. We have to get to the regular work. And every time we try to talk about that, it's, you know, there's, you know, just, of course, I've asked our building administrators, right, action goals and department strategies, you know, their SMART goals, and they submit their action plan. And a lot of that is, it's, I mean, not a lot, all of it is based on a strategic plan, and then, you know, any other specific areas that they would like to focus on, but everything really relates to the, you know, to the strategic plan. So we do have that. We're hoping, I'm hoping to resurrect, you know, to go back to that committee in November. If we're still, you know, if things get a little better, we'll meet in here if we have to. If not, we'll just, I'll meet with both our subcommittees remotely and work that way. But I really think the strategic plan needs to be updated. But my reservation with that is that we don't have any data. And the data is so important. It's not important to rate the teachers, but it's so important to set our goals. Where are we? And, you know, we've started to talk amongst ourselves about the idea of a blue ribbon school, applying for other types of recognition, and that's where the data really is critical. I mean, we can't apply for those things without data. So I would only be a little concerned this year in that I don't know where COVID's going to go and setting goals that we may not be able to achieve, because I also don't want to put too much pressure on everybody who's just right now are just trying to keep their heads above water, to be frank, and, you know, keep things going. So what I'd be happy to sit with you both and talk about it. I don't want to be averse to it. I think this is a better option than the super eval.
I think that you just had a good idea. Maybe during the course of this year, 5 areas, if we took one area per, you know, work session, and just bounced around the ideas, take that one area, bounce around the ideas, so that we're developing it, and as you're developing everything else that's looking for the data driven where we were all the time. You know, I do agree with you. It's a management time right now. And goals-oriented stuff at this point in time takes back seat to managing the health and safety and welfare of every student, you know, teacher in the district. So there's no doubt it's not a good time to put this in. You know? I would like, though, if we can continue conversation, because I just think that the school board one is so much more, it's accurate in the sense of looking at a vision and realizing that vision in a format of like a book, you know, very simple to that. And we don't have to, there's no money involved. It's zero cost. It's a form right there, zero cost there, and it was just a lot. So I think you guys got to go through this year too, in all fairness to you, because you'll see when we start putting that together, you know, there's quite a bit of research that you go back on your notes and your meetings to get the data put in there. But of course, you know, I think we're in a good spot then too, if we all can agree that, you know, we'll work on it during the course this year, work sessions, maybe the pre-planning, we could get a little definition, then we go to our meeting. Very good. Very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have anything they'd like to just add at this point in time to the agenda that we sort of oversight?
I just want to go back to the field coloring and stuff like that real quick. That's okay. Is that all
I'll
right?
take notes now.
No, it's,
Yes, yes.
so it's Mr. Grillo. Who's the-
Grillo.
Yes, Grillo.
So, I mean, I could easily email someone what we're thinking, but, you know, for where it says rocks in the end zone, Joe mentioned before that we'd like to at least see it with a black base and a white outline in the end zones. and tell me when you're ready for the middle ER.
So black letters, white outline.
That's right. We'd like to
We're
just
orange
see,
and black.
Yeah, just the reverse of what it is.
and then in the middle where it says ER, we'd like to also see orange ER, black outline, and then a white outline around it. That's what we originally discussed during that Zoom
I
call.
do remember
So,
Yeah.
It'd
So
be,
you
it'd be
want
nice to
to-
see that tricolor in the middle. I think it's gonna pop the whole field.
So you want orange, white, and black, or orange, black, and white?
Orange, black, and white.
The white will be on the outside.
That's correct. Yeah, it's gonna look great.
And then the question for John would be is that, whatever one we go with color, can that be painted in during the course of the football season? So it's not on top of, especially
Maybe,
first base.
yeah. Well, paint it, leave it orange, paint it green. Would green be easier to match than an orange? I don't know.
I don't know,
But we have to ask them what's easier to match.
whatever's easy to match.
So you want it painted green during baseball.
Right, or vice versa, as Joe's saying, whatever, they're the experts.
They can do that.
Yeah, they do it in the stadiums now. Wow. Just field paint.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Maybe a little, not perfect, but if you're feeling the ground ball first, having that orange line.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be turned on. Not that I can play baseball. It's all other story.
What's your sport?
Football.
Any other?
I think that's pretty much it.
Good.
There's a bunch of other lines too. Are they all in color?
Yeah, that's that all.
That sounds good to you. Okay, so I'd like to, a motion that we bring the work session, to a closure, and it's, 7:59.
So
And seconded, Julius, and Mr. McNally. Now I'd like to make a motion that we go back into executive session at 8 o'clock. Can I have a motion? So moved. Second? Seconded. Mateo. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Cut.
Good evening.
Lee, should I get you one of those?
Okay.